internet, why is it do you think we can't have babies anymore? My name is Matthew Kroll.
And I'm Shahir Dowd, and I haven't got the faintest idea, but this stork is quite tasty, isn't he?
High five for that. Yeah, we did it. Perfect comedic timing. And this is the only podcast about movies. Special edition. Shahir, why is it so special?
Well, it's special because you and I are here. No, wait, that happens every time. It's
That's
special
true.
because we're talking about movies. No, that we do that too. It's special because this is a user-requested film.
What? We're taking requests now?
Yeah, I know.
I want to request a new Ninja Turtles movie. Where do I have to do to request that?
I have veto power just like the US and the UN.
Oh,
So, but unlike the US and the UN, Dave Rowe emailed us in with a movie suggestion. He said, "What's up, guys? Heard you call for suggestions on the recent episode, so I wanted to contribute. My suggestion is Children of Men, as you probably guessed by the title and because of our bad jokes. Love the podcast. Keep it up. Thank you, Dave Rowe. This is a special episode going not just to you, but thank you very much for the suggestion. But to all
It's a
of our
great
listeners,
suggestion, yeah.
I was so excited when I saw this. I'm glad you didn't recommend something like Neighbors 2.
Yeah, no, I'm psyched too. And guys, if you want us to do other movies, please let us know. We're going to try to do, depending on how many requests we get, we're going to try to do these whenever we can, like as a special sort of midweek edition to talk about films that have come out, or even if you have something in the theater that you want us to go check out, let us know that too. Send us an email, give us a review on iTunes, throw it in there. You can post it on Facebook. Like, just give us movies you'd like to hear us talk/argue about, and we'll do it up.
I reserve the right to have veto power depending on what the movie is.
Nah.
So
Nah.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, you leave.
Wait, are you going to let the general public give us any movie?
You leave some love somewhere on one of those little social little internet
So
things.
if someone says they want us to watch a Serbian film, that film I talked about weeks ago with the absolutely most disgusting
if
thing
they
on-
say it lovingly in a 5-star review, I'll do it.
So here's my point. Actually, this is a good point. If you want us to see a film, tell us why.
Tell us why you want us to do it.
Yeah, like why do you think we'd be interested in doing it?
But yeah.
You didn't need to say much about Children of Men.
Right. I mean, we wanted to. This is a movie that's super fun to talk about.
Yeah.
But actually, you were talking about some sad shit about it too.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've seen this movie. Seeing it for this podcast was the fourth time I've seen it around. But I've seen it 3 times, and I've always wanted to talk about it. Unfortunately, one thing I didn't realize is that this is a movie that cost $70 million to make and only made $35 million. So it seems to be almost a lost movie, I think.
Well, yeah, no, 100%. It's sad that it did not, because this is a film. You were even saying this before. It's like it's a masterclass in filmmaking, and I agree 100%. Like,
I think in filmmaking circles, this is a much vaulted film. This is a film that directors, cinematographers, editors, actors all talk about.
100%.
Screenwriters as well. But I feel like outside of those circles, this is not necessarily a film that people talk about. I mean, the film that I think about in relation to this film is Minority Report, which admittedly came out 4 years before Children of Men.
This is way more powerful and better, I think, than Minority Report is.
If
in my opinion.
That's a question to have on a podcast forum, I would say.
If only we knew of one.
But Minority Report was a financial success. It's even spawned a TV show recently.
Is that show doing well?
I don't know. I've heard not. But
Okay.
but admittedly I have not seen it. So
Sadly, the badge of it even spawned a TV show is not something one can wear with full pride anymore.
but Minority Report, domestic,
They're making a Lethal Weapon show.
That's true. But they're not making a Children of Men show, which I think they could. And Minority Report made in the like $300 million back. So
Sure.
it made.
I don't think they could make a Children of Men show. I think this film and why it works so well in the medium that it currently is.
Don't get me wrong. I think extending franchises like this without a really good reason is a bad thing.
If you could tell an interesting story in this world,
I think this is a fascinating world.
But this sort of ties up a lot of sort of things in the world, even to get like enough for me. Like, I don't need the continuation of the story or whatnot.
I'm not suggesting we need more Children of Men.
Yeah.
But I am, and maybe it's in the indictment as well, is that if the movie had made more than its budget back, then we would be
we'd be in season 6.
Yeah, we'd be seeing a lot more Children of Men. But we're not. And so Matt, before I get into mine, because my history with this film is slightly long, and I'm going to try and condense it, but just your general history with this film, like what
I went to see it in the theater. I enjoyed the crap out of it, and to be honest, before this time being the second time that I had watched it, that I remembered really liking it and really sort of being viscerally attached to it. But at the same time, the scene is what got me into it. We'll talk about it, but the scene near the end of the film that's all one take, or it seems one take, is so good. And I remember it's one of those things that you're so engrossed with what's going on, you don't even realize it's one take until about halfway through. You're like, wait, have they got the camera? Like, what?
Yeah.
And that's what's always stuck with me. But upon watching this again, damn, man, like I haven't had this sort of world building sort of feeling out of a straight up narrative, I think, since The Last of Us, honestly, on PS4,
right.
Which sadly they're making a movie of. There's no reason for it.
Yeah.
But it paints a world sort of very similar in a very bleak and very complete way. And I feel like Last of Us borrowed a shit ton from Children of Men.
It's funny is when I watched this the first time, I felt like this film borrowed from Gears of War. Like it got aesthetically, but I don't think this is a film that's pandering to like be a video game at all. It's got so much on its mind. I mean, any other general opinion?
No, I love it. I forgot how much I loved it till I watched it again.
Thank you, Dave Rowe.
Yeah, thank you very much, man. I love it when people are like, "Hey, remember that awesome thing?" And I was like, "Yeah, I remember it's awesome." They're like, "You probably don't remember how awesome it is." And I was like, "Sure, I do." And then I was like, "No, I didn't." No, I really enjoyed it. I think, God, from a storytelling perspective, and I mean this from both the scripted side and the world that tells the story of sort of what's happening in a larger picture, it just gets everything across to you so clearly. And like the world itself, you don't see a whole lot of it, but you get it. Like, you know what's fucking going on. And it's a horrible place that I particularly wouldn't want to live in, but I love hearing stories in. Yeah. What about you? What's your long convolute? What happened? What was it in New Zealand? Who hurt you in New Zealand?
Who hurt you? Don't tell me. I'll get them. No,
I didn't say that.
You wouldn't beat up.
I was giving out high fives today, Shahir.
I was just so excited to see this film because of this director's previous film.
What was it?
Y Tu Mama También.
Oh shit, that's right.
This is Alfonso Cauron, and I am.
He got that Potter money.
Yeah, well, I honestly think Alfonso Cauron is one of the great living filmmakers today. And I think Y Tu Mama También that is a film that legitimately, I think I can. It was always in my top 5. I'm pretty sure it's in my top 3 films of all time.
Wow.
I lift that film. That film spoke to me so. It was like the film was speaking directly to me, and every emotion you could experience in that film, I had. Now, there was an interesting thing because that film was for a short period banned in New Zealand because of the sexual content. That's a long, convoluted history.
You people are fucked up.
But it was temporarily because of one weird Christian group that likes to take it upon themselves to ban, to ban anything with sexual content. They hadn't even watched the movie, and so
that's always good.
Oh yeah, it's brilliant. I wrote articles about it back in the day. So I went to see it because I was like, oh, I want to see this. Like this film that they're so complaining about. I had seen Great Expectations. I hadn't seen A Little Princess. Solo con tu pareja, which is a film about a man who has AIDS and has to tell his former lovers, is a film I haven't seen yet. It's on my Netflix queue. So I went to see Y Tu Mama También, had my mind absolutely blown. I thought this storytelling was just the second coming of a great visionary talent.
I can totally see that. I think it's interesting, sort of from a case study standpoint of like, oh, this is the film that you said spoke like directly to you.
Yeah.
And guess which film spoke directly to me. I don't know if you'll get it.
Well, I know Escape from New York.
Yeah, but in a different way. Like,
and then Youth.
No. The film I'm thinking of is actually Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
I can totally see that. Yeah,
and it's so interesting. Because I feel like, again, whether you like or hate either of these films, like the type of feeling that we got from them is very similar.
And and I think the thing that's interesting about making that distinction with it's the film that speaks to you is I can understand if you could pick apart Y Tu Mama También for any reason, and you could, and
I can understand. I mean, you can pick apart,
Scott Pilgrim, but it's this film that like is so personal to you, that it's difficult to pick apart. But anyway, and then I had a thing with Harry Potter. I was not a big fan.
I wasn't a big fan.
Yeah, the problem I had with Harry Potter had to do with the same problem that I have with the Marvel world, which is that I feel they weren't making films, or they were making episodes, and they weren't interesting episodes.
That wasn't the problem for me. The problem for me with Harry Potter is that I can't stand magic that rhymes. I can't do it.
Snuffleupagus populus.
And the fact I tried. Story time in college. Real quick tangent. I made a bet with a girlfriend that I had at the time where she would play the first disc of Final Fantasy VII if I read the first Harry Potter book.
Right.
I finished the Harry Potter book and I was like, this is not for me. Like I just didn't get into it. And I can understand why people did. It just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
But a small personal victory. She played through all the discs of Final Fantasy VII
And loved it.
Yep. Anyway,
but then so he made the thing about him was that he then went and made Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which is far and away I think still
the best one, right?
Far and away the best one because it's the most it's the one that feels most like a film that's not trying to set up other films. And
I watched them all in one day during a flood.
Oh God, what is wrong with you?
I hurt
But
myself.
that film is the one that would have stood out to you, right?
Yeah, no, that was my favorite one.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think the thing that's interesting is he set up the visual language for Harry Potter for the remainder of the series.
Yes.
And he picked a story that was self-contained and really compelling. It had that beautiful time-traveling metaphor that was just really wonderfully done.
Yeah.
So so I was like, this is the kind of director that should be doing Marvel movies if they're going to be doing
100%.
He should be doing, but I'm glad he isn't. I'm so glad.
But you know what was funny? You bring that up. I was thinking about it. I was like, what Marvel movie would I want to see him do?
Yeah.
And there's an Avengers run, which will probably happen sometime in Phase 4. No one's announced anything, of course, but it's called Dark Reign, where Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, through things happen, basically take over the Avengers and it gets government funded by the government thinking he's the person to be in charge. And it's this sort of dark, I hate using the word gritty. It's not even gritty. It's just like, it would be a perfect feel the way Children of Men feels if they could do a Dark Reign film that. Holy shit.
I would love if every Marvel movie felt this crafted and well thought out and interesting and the world was built so well. I just don't find that's the case. But so I was like, once I saw what he did on a small scale with Y Tu Mama También and then what he did on a larger scale with like one of the biggest franchises in the world at the time, I was like, oh my God, this dude can do no wrong. And then Children of Men came out and I saw it in the theater. And here's the thing. I thought it was a masterclass in filmmaking. It was, I still... Again, in filmmaking circles, we still talk about this movie.
His script writing, too. I do want to point that out. The script is phenomenal.
My experience of watching it, though, was that I felt that it was a film. It's one of those rare cases where the filmmaking, in my mind, was better than the story that was being told. And I felt a little dissatisfied when I left the film because I felt like this was such an amazing demonstration of craft and storytelling that I was just a little bit disappointed by the simplicity of the actual story. Now, because given the emotional complexity of a film like Y Tu Mama También. Now, and it's weird because, so I'm going to jump around a little bit before I get to Children of Men. So the thing is that Y Tu Mama También, Children of Men, and Gravity are a triptych of films with Alfonso Cauron with his cinematographer Emmanuel Lubezki, who we talked about, who was the cinematographer of The Revenant. He is the cinematographer for Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu. So he's.
I love your accent, by the way. When you
I'm
just
really
throw it on.
trying it out there. He's the only cinematographer to win the Oscar 3 times in a row. Amazing cinematographer, and it's
hat trick.
And what is interesting about these 3 films, Y Tu Mama También, Children of Men, Gravity, is that they are what Alfonso Cauron is amazing at is he is a technician of the highest order, but he's also a technician with something to say. His stories have heart. He has a lot on his mind politically. Now, I think Y Tu Mama También, to me, is the best marriage of his political worldview and his technical prowess. Children of Men is an excellent example of that, but I feel like his storytelling, I felt like the story didn't quite live up to what the filmmaking technical ability. And then I think Gravity, the last film he's made, is an excellent example of technical filmmaking, and it is a very good story. Now, when I say storytelling, I have problems with the story, but I think, again, I would much rather take Children of Men's story, which I have some slights with, over other people's masterworks. Like, so it's kind of like I'm nitpicking here. Now, the other interesting thing I just want to point out is it is a film I've watched 4 times over now.
Sure.
And every time I watch it, the richer the experience gets. Whereas every time I've watched Gravity, the more I marvel at its technical prowess, but the less I get out of it from a storytelling
I'm not
point
a fan
of
of Gravity.
I really like Gravity. It really does work, but it's not a film with a lot of it feels like not a lot of meat on it beyond the initial experience. But that's what's also kind of great about it.
Yeah.
So that's my long, convoluted history with Children of Men.
I just want to say something about, you sort of said the story is weaker, and I know you're nitpicking in the filmmaking itself. I disagree only because, like, again, these are my analogies, so I use them. X-Men we did a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
The way that I was so enthralled with sort of Magneto's story. Right. If they had stuck with Magneto throughout the entire happenings of X-Men Apocalypse and watched him the way they watched Clive Owen's character in Children of Men, that would have been a far stronger film.
This is what I've been saying about the
but you know
Marvel
what I mean? But this is what I'm
movies,
saying.
Yeah.
I really appreciate when characters, and especially non-superpowered or non-sci-fi or sort of human beings, right?
Yeah.
Speak to each other like human beings.
Oh my God!
With weight and with history. Like you knew him and Clive Owen and Julian Moore and
Jasper by Michael
and Michael Caine. God bless Michael Caine.
He's so good in this movie.
All feels like they've known each other and it's real, and they're in this world that has changed them certain ways, all of them, and they have a history and the way. Not saying like every word is poetry, but not every word in a conversation is poetry, as illustrated on the only podcast about movies.
Yeah.
And it just feels like you're looking at a glimpse of real people in a fascinating world that he's created.
It's amazing.
I think the dialogue is wonderful, but I also really appreciate the fact that, yes, the story is not the most complex thing, but even upon second viewing, I didn't remember a couple of the twists, and I think that's a credit to the film because it paints them so well that I was like, oh yeah. And it's still as satisfying the second time, granted years later. So I like that it is, for the most part, a simpler story about a man, spoiler alert, trying to get the last pregnant woman to a group of scientists on a boat. I
think, and again, it's so nitpicky because it's, given the state of big budget science fiction films today, this is still such a masterwork. And the thing is, now that I know the story more, I think my initial feeling was that he'd built up such a rich world that I was left a little dissatisfied by the actual story that was being told in there, and there was so much going on. And I'm talking about the first time I saw this movie in a theater, and I was like so overwhelmed by how this world worked and be put together. And then, I was like less satisfied with the actual story. Now, having watched it 3 more times since then, and knowing what the actual story is, I can poke into the background a little bit more and ascertain information that I need.
Sure.
So I feel like it's one of these films that every time you revisit it, it kind of gets richer and richer.
I can see that, yeah.
But just the opposite of that is Y Tu Mama Tambien, which is like the first time I watched that movie was so emotionally complex for me and so rich that I found the first viewing to be so completely satisfying. And then every viewing from there has gotten better and better. Whereas this one, I found the first viewing like, oh, it's amazing made, but
I get what you're saying.
And to your point, so when I mentioned big budget science fiction films or like action movies these days, one of the things is that I think about is the Batman trilogy, the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy, which Michael Caine is a part of. And look,
is the secret for you Michael Caine?
No, well, here's the thing: because
it's the secret for me.
Really,
it's not a secret.
It's not a secret. Everyone knows your secret. You really are Batman.
What?
But wait, whoa!
No, I'm not. Why would you say that?
Lie to swear to me. But the thing that always annoyed me about the Christopher Nolan Batmans, as much as I think that they were ambitious in scope, is exactly the thing you just said, which is I never felt like there were two human beings talking to each other like two human beings in that film.
Except when Michael Caine talked.
Even Michael Caine. I
thought his speeches were human.
I think he was good at. He's such a good actor that he managed to translate that dialogue into into speak. But I felt like in Batman, everyone talked in platitudes and everyone talked in ideology. Nobody talked like real people. Whereas in this film, the piece of dialogue that we mentioned at the beginning, where Michael Caine is trying to explain the Human Project as a joke, it feels like two real people. Like Clive Owen interrupts him halfway through, and he's like been smoking pot, and he goes, "Jesus, that was strong," and and he's trying to get this joke out, and it doesn't get out, and he's like, "Jesus, mate, I'm just trying to tell a joke."
He's like, the joke's not. He's like, I'm trying to tell a joke. He's like, "Oh, keep going." He's like, "No, I don't want to," and like it goes like back and forth,
it feels like two people, and I was like, "Why don't films feel like this anymore?"
I know.
Why don't films?
It's poor writing. I mean, outside of this, the reason is poor writing. And people think that it's so hard to write something and have it acted out in a compelling way like this. Like, not a lot of people can do it. And they just found it in this writing and this director, in Clive Owen and Michael Caine. And I mean, imagine lesser actors or lesser writers trying to do this, and you don't have to imagine it because it's all over the fucking screen. Like, it's there. And not everyone can pull it off. And that just adds to the different, like another piece of this tapestry of special that is Children of Men.
And I, there's so much little detail in this film.
Yeah, the world that actually I got really excited when I watched it. When this movie starts out and Clive Owen is going to get a cup of coffee and he's walking down the streets of London in 2027, is it?
Yeah, 2027.
So it's just the near future, right? And on the news it said baby Diego, who is 18 years old, the youngest person on the planet, is dead. And by the way, if we haven't mentioned this yet and you haven't seen it, just in case, the premise of this movie is they're living in a world where human beings are no longer fertile and cannot have children, and therefore the world's kind of gone to shit. Such an interesting premise, something you wouldn't normally think about, but why do human beings persevere? So their kids will be okay. And the second you take that away, we're probably going to become bigger pieces of shit than we are. Yeah. So the whole premise of this movie is every country and continent has fallen except London and England. It stands.
It stands, and there's the argument that it stands is that it has tight border security and illegal immigrants aren't allowed. And it's this, Dave, again, this movie is so relevant as we head into this election cycle this year with one particular candidate.
So, Ted Cruz. But the thing that caught me the first time when you was watching this sort of happen is the way that media was portrayed in this scene. It was on the side of buildings, it was doing whatever, and it has a sci-fi element, but it felt the sci-fi element of this, even like standing boards at newspaper shops and things like that, felt so real, and how I could see this utilitarian tech being used in this sort of way. Like, it's not flashy anymore, it just needs to work. And like, I felt like even the bullshit, I'm sorry, I'm stumbling. The love that someone put into the most minute details of this tech that in the world is not made to be super eye-popping or eye-catching, just lent itself to the believability of this universe that they were creating for us on the screen. And I really appreciate small details like that. And it helps a million times. And it helps even further when the first shocking thing of the film happens, that because Owen Wilson's character... Owen Wilson. Clive Owen. Owen, Owen Wilson shows up. You haven't seen the sequel?
What's funny is I completely went along with you.
I know. You're like, oh, yeah, Owen Wilson. It was great. When Clive Owen leaves, he leaves the coffee shop early because he doesn't want to watch, I think, the Baby Diego stuff. And he takes his cream and sugar outside to put it in on a bench. And then a bomb goes off.
In that coffee shop.
Yeah. And you're like, oh, fuck. Like...
It's so good. And, the thing about, because there's been discussions, I read an essay about, like, the notion of science fiction design. We tend to think of science fiction future design as utopian. So in other words, it's always clean, it's well maintained. It's kind of like what the world looked like if it was just freshly unwrapped, is the way we kind of perceive science fiction utopias. And this is not or even a science fiction dystopia. Anytime we're looking at future technology, we sort of think about it as it just unwrapped. What's great about this film is everything feels like it was unwrapped.
Dirty.
It feels like it was unwrapped 30 years ago, and this is the state it's in now.
It's that color a computer from 1995 turns now. That
it's
sort of like brown, muted brown yellow.
Yeah. It's
oxidized plastic.
So like it go. We've said it 4 or 5 times now, but it goes without saying, if you are a filmmaker, you need to watch this movie, not just from a technical point of view, but just from a world building. Not if you're trying to tell a science fiction story, but any type of film. Just the way in which the world feels lived in is just masterfully done. I feel like, like a lot of films' budgets go into the post-production side of things where, like you would spend a lot of money on those screens, for example, or you would spend a lot of money on a piece of technology like the little game that the kid is playing at the art table.
At his brother's house.
But what it feels like the money got spent on in this film, as it rightly should have, was the locations.
Yeah.
Like it feels like those to the point where at the end of the film where Clive Owen is running barefoot through a war zone, I was kind of like...
Die Hard in it.
Yeah, I actually, that you just brought up a reference I was going to bring up later, which is I feel like this film is Die Hard with a baby, which was that like I was there was a part of me watching this now generally going, oh my God, Clive Owen's running barefoot through bricks and mortar and stuff like that. He's probably going to get hurt, and I was kind of like, so the stakes was so high. It didn't feel like movie. It felt like they'd found this location and just went, fuck it, let's do it here. So, goes without saying, before we continue anywhere into the story or any other elements, this is a masterclass in filmmaking.
And now we will get into Spoiler Town for a movie. When was it released? 2006. It's a 10-year anniversary.
10-year anniversary of this movie. You've got...
So you got no excuse.
Yeah.
I think 10-year, we shouldn't even have to give you a spoiler alert.
One of the things I love about this movie as well is the way in which the politics of the world are told in the background. Like,
yes,
any corner, I feel like if this film if the camera moved in any direction, you would see a little piece of information which would tell you about the state of the world sometimes in minor details and then sometimes in major details, where you're seeing people being locked up in cells alongside the railway. It's just wonderfully done. And there's a really good, if anyone knows Slavoj Žižek, the Slovenian philosopher, he writes it's actually on the Blu-ray as well. He's got a little video essay where he talks about the reason he believes Children of Men is effective political storytelling is because the politics of the film are told in the background details. It's not a film about politics. It's a film that lives within its political
It's the reason Mad Max works.
Yeah. I think actually you're right. Yeah, it's Mad Max is another really good example of where the world feels lived in and is happening, and we're just embracing it as it happens.
We're not learning about the politics between the plateau and gas town and or gas whatever and whatever the fuck, they're important and they're lived in. And it matters to the people, and you can tell basically with the world that they've built. So I think when you can do that, like Children of Men does, I mean, you're given that, if you can pull that off, you can build. It's a solid foundation for greatness.
I wish more movies today were like that. I feel like movies are written by
committee.
I don't know. Committee is the wrong word, but I feel like movies are written to get us from A to B without enjoying the time we spend in A to B. And I feel like this movie was like, let's really be in the world, and when we get to B, that's what will happen. So I love that sense of world building, and I just wish more films were like this.
Yeah. So Clive Owen's character, what's the character's name? I can never remember. Theo, thank you.
Yeah.
We follow him around a bit in the beginning through his sort of life. He goes to see Michael Caine, his buddy, who grows weed in the woods, and visits him. He goes to work, just a general sort of guy. And then you find out a little bit later that he used to be involved with Julianne Moore's character, who is the leader of a resistance movement. What exactly are they resisting to? They're resisting the immigration laws?
Yeah, immigration laws. So they're called the Fish.
Yeah.
And they're resisting this idea that the borders, in the decay of modern society, in modern English society, they've decided to limit immigration,
put them in camps,
and camps that look awfully like Guantanamo Bay.
Sure.
And run by the Department of Homeland Security, which is not an entity that exists in Britain.
But this is the interesting part, and this is the one sort of flaw I feel like in the logic of, maybe not. I don't think it's a flaw in the logic of the movie. I think it's just a flaw in the logic of the Fish in a weird way. The reason Britain is okay is because with the world gone to shit, they have crazy borders. That's why, and I'm not saying it's right, but that's why Clive Owen can go buy a cup of coffee still and like drive in a train and like, just, infrastructure still exists is because they're not being overrun.
No, but the problem, I don't like that word overrun because it kind of connotates something feral or insect like. And the reason why it's problematic in this film is that it's a detail that I noticed this time around.
Okay.
Was that there's a commercial playing on the bus and it's a commercial that goes, "This is my neighbor. They're my shopkeeper. They're this person." And then it comes up with, "Doesn't matter. They're illegal immigrants and they're not allowed in here." So what the film was playing on the problem that the fish have is that they're not just stopping the people coming in at the border.
Mm-hmm.
They're also saying people who are in the United Kingdom who don't fit the quote unquote mold of the United Kingdom should be taken out.
Oh, I didn't get that. I thought they were just people like that had snuck in.
Right. No, I think it's also it's the weird thing. Like, how do you feel about? We have to mention. I always feel like this particular political candidate should be the person whose name should not be mentioned.
Vermin Supreme, right?
Yeah. Because every time you mention him, he probably masturbates by his headphones and gains some sort of power.
Do you think he listens to the only podcast about movies? I mean, we're the only one. So
if he's into movies, he probably does.
We did do The Art of the Deal, the movie.
Yeah, he probably heard that. It's that question of like, okay, border security is one issue, but the other thing was the deportation of people who are already in the United States. And it's, how do you feel, not you personally, but like how this film is kind of like, talking about how that idea of separation between us and them happens in this film. And it's like,
of course.
And obviously Clive Owen is a person who's going to wander through the streets fairly safely, but a person who looks like me might not.
I just never, and I'm not saying that the movie didn't go that way. I'm saying I didn't see it that way. I saw it as keeping immigrants out,
right? Which
in this world, in this weird sci-fi world, that this is sort of the last bastion of quote humanity that once was is the only place it still exists. I can see why they do that for the status quo that they're trying to protect. I never got the idea that they were hunting people that just looked different.
I think they'd become
become increasingly paranoid, but there was never any sort of, correct me if I'm wrong, there's never any sort of like racial, sort of like you look this way, so we need to put you in a cage. There was all different ethnicities throughout both sort of societal.
Yeah. I think the question would be, the question that comes up in that is how do you distinguish between a person who's a different ethnicity who's here legally versus a person who's
papers.
Papers. And then, that creates this other culture then of like people who might have lived here all their life having to require papers, where people who've been all their life who are white and Clive Owen don't have to show
Fair
papers.
Enough. I just don't know how much it actually, if it said that one way or the other. I never saw it, but I could totally see it as a thing.
Yeah, and there's that, and like I say, there's that commercial on the bus, which is that,
I thought it just meant like almost like the way illegal immigrants are in the in real life.
I think the commercial is an inverse of like the way in which that idea has been put to us before, which is like, you show a picture of an illegal and then you say, this person's my neighbor, or this person is like lives down.
They took our jobs.
Yeah. And then the commercial kind of flips it and says, doesn't matter. Report illegal immigration. Sure. And it sets up this culture of like reporting fear, people who are not us, quote unquote.
Fear attracts the fearful, Shahir.
It's true. So, it actually leads to this is a weird topic, and I think it'll come off wrong as soon as I say it.
Oh, but good. Those are my favorite.
But I think one of the things that makes Alfonso Cauron an interesting filmmaker, particularly in a film like this, is that he is not American. And I think it leads, I think and this is, this is a film set in the UK. It stars British people. It's just funded by the United States, or by a U.S. studio, I'm presuming.
I love that this didn't take place in America.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Because to be honest, if this was real, America would be the first place to fucking go. Like, I could feel like the British are so fucking, like, just like sort of like in their world.
Yeah.
Like, they'd be like, nope. This is what we're doing. We're still having fucking tea, goddammit. Like, Americans would just be fucking killing each other.
It'd be zombie land all over, straight away. I think what Alfonso Cauron brings to this is an ethnographic point of view, which is that he looks at it like an outsider. And he looks at the little details that would not necessarily be important to someone who lived in that culture. I think it's easy, like the thing that's interesting is that the camera travel, and he does this in Y Tu Mama También as well. Like the whole thing there is that the camera drifts past the story every now and again to show you a little piece of detail that's happening in the background, like a car accident where someone died, and then the narrator explains exactly how that person got there. And then drifts back towards the story. And I think I don't know if that has to do with him being an outsider or not being American. I don't know.
I think it does.
I think it does. I just don't want to say it's because he's a Mexican filmmaker working in English films.
He brings a outlook and a point of view across that not everyone can bring.
Yeah. And it's unique. I think it's unique to him.
100%.
Like it's even like in Gravity, for example, it's just in the peripheral, but a character is an Indian character who sings like this famous Bollywood song in the background. And like when my mother heard, I showed Gravity to my mother recently, when she heard it, she like perked up. It was like, oh, it's my people.
Oh.
Like it's just that kind of little detail that he brings to it. So I think that's like a quality, and like the amount of the way in which he depicts basically the third world zone. I think it's called Bell's Hill in this Bix Hill in this film. It's where the final war zone happened.
Essex Hill? No, sex. It said the word sex in it. I thought
it was Bix Hill. Maybe you just heard sex. And
no, it has the word sex in it.
Maybe it was Bix, and you were just like, man, I'm really horny right now.
Yeah, that way.
The way in which he depicts that world and that culture, like that world falling apart on itself, is so detailed. But it's detail that's all in the background. He manages to strike a really good balance between foreground and background action. To the point, I think there's been a couple of really good essays about the way in which Children of Men treats its background characters. And then the other thing he does, which is a distinction from the book to the film, because this is an adaptation of a P.D. James book, was that the book, I believe, Theo was a doctor in the book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Dr. Theo Farron, an Oxford Don. So I think he probably had more agency in terms of like knowing and understanding how
Bexhill. I must have had something else in my brain.
You had something else in your brain.
Bexhill. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, I'll take that. So but in the book he was a doctor. In the film, he's just an everyday, ordinary schmo, just a guy. I don't think he has any particular skills of note other than at one point he was an activist. Yeah.
Right, which brings us to the Julianne Moore character.
Yeah.
She grabs him on the street with her thugs from the fish, and you get this sort of history between them, and he wants. They
had a child together.
They had a child together who apparently died.
Yeah.
Then they obviously drifted apart, and she became the leader of this resistance, and he just went about his life. Now she gets him because she knows that his brother is influential.
His cousin.
No, it's his brother.
It's his cousin.
Is it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Family member.
Yeah.
Knows is influential to get papers. To move a person that she doesn't say who yet, and for old time's sake, and he basically says he'll do it. He goes to this cousin's house. And eventually, the guy who's collecting all the art. You said the line. What is the line? It's something along the lines of you walk in, you see that David is there.
Yeah, and I think Theo says something to the lines of like, in 100 fucking years, everyone will be dead, and there won't be anyone to see all this fucking art. Why do you keep doing it? And he, I think it's Julian. Oh, yeah, the character.
He's a government minister, the cousin.
Yeah, I it's easy. I just try not to think about it.
Yeah, I don't think about it.
It's that kind of like piss. Like if you knew that the society was ending, the thing that's interesting is people still go to their jobs and people still kind of like go and do their, like do whatever it is they're doing. It's just like, I just try not to think about it. It's a really, I don't know. It's a really cool little detail.
So he gets these papers, but the problem is he only could score papers for two people. Like it would be a couple or a guests or not guests, just like a pairing.
Yeah.
And, wow, that's like kind of wraps him up in the entire thing, and then they try to convince him to go along with this woman who you find out is pregnant. Now
that's the sound I make when I hear people pregnant.
Pregnant. No, it makes sense. Okay. Now the next part that got me, and I'm trying to remember when this is. Julianne Moore was taking him back to the base.
They were basically driving Key, the girl.
Had we met Key already?
Yeah, we'd met. They basically just.
But you never knew that she was pregnant yet.
No,
at this
he just
point.
gets into a car with her, so she's sitting down.
Yep.
And this like filmmakers again watch this scene over and over again because of the single take inside this car.
Sure.
If you've ever watched how they made this scene, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Like the car is this extended car where they built a ramp on top, and the camera can move in and out of the car. It's And then they're sieged upon by a group of resistance fighters or something like that.
Not quite sure at the point.
Well, we learn later.
I know we learn later what they are, but at that point you're not sure. You see a car on fire rolling down a hill in the woods, ready to block the road.
Yeah, and it's all told from inside this car.
And then just like hordes of people coming down and attacking the car.
Yeah. Killing Julianne Moore.
Yeah, very shockingly. After a sort of like another one of those human moments of them, so like a skill they could do with the ping pong ball, like spitting it back into each other's mouths.
See, that's just such a great detail. It's such a weird.
And that's a bullshit thing that like I would do with someone that I was close with at college. Like, oh, only we can do this. Like, so again, you get that feeling of like these are real people with histories and lives, and they speak to each other and interact in a natural way.
Yeah. And then it has that thing which is like the stakes. You realize the stakes of the story are so high when like a character you've kind of been attached to and a name that you've been, like really enjoying just gets killed.
Game of Thrones on the floor.
Yeah, just down.
And then they get away after some heroic door smashing onto motorcycles, which looks brutal. And they get back to their like refugee camp. No,
they find a farm that's a safe haven.
The safe haven. That's the camp. That's the. Oh, no, sorry. I used refugee camp wrong. The Bexhill thing is the refugee camp. This is the Resistance's sort of one of their bases.
They have a farm. Yeah.
Also, I can never pronounce his name, but I love it. Chatwell Effinger.
Yeah, I'm butchering it. But
Ejofer. Whatever. He is wonderful. I have loved him since Serenity, and I've never seen him in something that I don't like. So I forgot he was in this, and I was like, yes!
He's so good. The movie I first saw him in was Melinda and Melinda, the Woody Allen film.
Okay.
Where he plays a violinist or a cellist or something like that.
He's great. He's so good.
Oh, he's so good.
We get back to this farm. They clean up, whatever. They're going to vote on a new leader, and they're going to say they're going to leave in the morning with the girl. Someone will escort the girl as a pairing.
Did you... Okay, yeah.
Report Key or support or bring Key to where she needs to go. But Clive Owen, not Owen Wilson, overhears that, in fact, the raid that happened to them at the car was actually orchestrated by the very same people they're staying with, and because he sees like the motorcyclist ride up all beat up.
Do you know who the motorcyclist is?
Dreadlock guy?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Charlie Hunnam.
Okay.
Sons of Anarchy.
I haven't watched her.
Oh, okay. All right.
But what? That
he was
blows
also
my mind.
Pacific Rim as well.
Was he?
Yeah. Anyway, continue.
So Clive Owen takes it upon himself being like, oh shit. So he, Key, and who's the sort of midwife-ish?
The midwife, I forget her name, but this is the point at which Clive Owen realizes she's pregnant, and all of a sudden
No, he realized she's pregnant before, and they were in the bar, and they all yeah.
And this is why
he thinks it's so important to actually go against this and try to escape.
Yeah. Well, he realizes that. Well, also they threaten his life without them. He overhears a conversation when they said they're going to.
And they're going to use the baby as like a political thing as opposed to actually like getting it to this tomorrow. Oh, the idea is to get the papers. They're trying to get Key, this pregnant woman, to the Tomorrow Project.
Yeah, the Human Genome.
The Human Project or whatever it's called, which is a boat, and it's a super secretive organization that like you have to talk through like mirrors. It's like people and people and people. Like it's a big game of telephone to get a hold of them.
Yeah.
So they've arranged Key to be brought there, but the thing is they're actually never going to. Julianne Moore's character wanted to do that, but his character did not. He wants to use the baby as a political maneuvering chip
to bring on the uprising.
Yes.
And killing Julianne Moore's character is important in that because she is the leader of the fishes.
Yep.
So killing her will begin the uprising, so to speak.
Yes.
Yeah, and then again, this is amazing scene where Clive Owen has to escape the farm, and
he fucks up all the other cars except for the one he takes, which I love.
Yeah, and then he and he's barefoot as well, so he's running around barefoot in this scene, like running through the mud trying to get, and the car won't start.
Yeah, they have to like jump start it.
They have to jump start
or kick start it.
And then like the problem, the stakes here are going to get even more complicated because nobody wants to shoot guns because nobody wants to injure the baby.
Yep.
And so like there's a great scene where Patrick, the Charlie Hunnam actor, the guy with the dreadlocks, runs up and he's got his gun pointed directly at Clive Owen, and he has to yell back, "I've got a clear shot. Do I have permission to shoot?"
And then he gets hit with the door again. I love it. Yeah, it was so good. And then they eventually get away after this beautiful scene of just like it's just a really impressive scene. Again, one of many.
I think it's a single take as well. And what's cool about it is a single take is it starts in darkness and it eventually becomes daytime. So it's happening like at the early dawn hours.
So then they get away and they start driving. Now the only place they know where to go is Michael Caine's house,
Jasper's house.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they go there, and they set up shop there for a bit, but then they're tracked down.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they got tracked down, but it isn't quite explained. But
yeah. By the resistance people, the same people they just escaped from, and they get away. Clive Owen and the midwife, but sadly, Jasper decides to stay back, and after telling the resistance to pull his finger multiple times, a joke that has sort of gone through the entire thing, he gets gunned down, which is very sad. But Clive Owen now has nowhere else to go but move forward. Before Jasper's death.
Yeah, Jasper had arranged for them because Jasper is growing pot in his house, in his little secret house that he sells to one of the guards at Bix Hill.
Yep.
And he's arranged for that guard, played by Peter Mullen.
Sid.
Sid. Peter Mullen's a really good director as well, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really terrific director. He made a film called My Name Is Joe and The Magdalene Sisters. Very good actor as well, obviously.
Yeah.
He'd made a deal. Jasper had made a deal with Peter Mullen with Sid to take them into Bix Hill and allow them to travel to get a boat from the Human Project
to go get to the boat that they're trying to meet.
Yeah,
because the refugee camp was against the water.
Yeah. So yeah, and then once they so then you go through the horrors of essentially the internment camps where refugees are being taken, which they use a very direct direct image from Guantanamo Bay. Do you remember when when all the photographs of like what prisoner torture was happening in Guantanamo Bay? There was a photo of a prisoner with a sack on his head when holding his hands out. That's directly in the background. You see that character in the scene, which is again just this amazing little bit of detail building, and it's literally blink and you'll miss it, but it's there. And so to your point where you're talking about Britain has secured its borders. This is what securing its borders means to Britain, which is very inhumane, very torturous. So Clive Owen and Key are separated from their midwife. They're taken into Bix Hill, where they find refuge for a night.
Before that even happens, they're on that bus, and the reason the midwife gets taken away is because she starts acting a little bit crazy because the Key has gone into labor on the internment camp bus.
Yeah.
And in order to distract the dog from freaking out from the smell of the water breaking and whatever, Clive Owen lies and says, she peed herself, saying the midwife did, but the midwife gets pushed out of the bus because she's acting crazy, and then they get to keep moving. So that's how we lose her. Fate. Who the hell knows what happens to her?
Well, it's all it's that question of we're okay with refugees being deported until the wrong person gets deported. You know what I mean? And that's what the case is there. She's not a refugee or an illegal according to this, but she gets thrown into that camp.
I thought she was because she was a resistance fighter. Anyway.
She's a resistance fighter, but she's not an illegal immigrant. She's English. Okay. That's the thing. She gets thrown in there. No one's going to believe her when she's in there. So I presume she's going to meet a horrible end or a horrible fate.
Well, that's the thing I didn't quite understand. This is something that this is one of my only problems with this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand why. This world is very anti-immigrant, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Why have an immigration camp? Why not just hold people at the board? You're not allowed to come in. Why gather people? Why not just keep kicking people out?
Well, I think the process of kicking people out is complex, and
and
you need a.
But this seemed like this is almost like a city.
Yeah, I think that's the area in which they take. Once you've been arrested, imagine you get 1,000 refugees. Are you going to put each of them on a plane back to their country, to this country, to this country, to this country?
No, you bus them. I guess in this world, I would say you keep busing them to a border and you kick them off.
And that's what this area is. I think
this is sort of the border.
Well, I think Bix Hill is actually kind of a prison.
Right, which I didn't. That's why I didn't understand. Like, why are we imprisoning all these people as opposed to just deporting them?
Because where do you deport them to?
Wherever.
And, it's.
Again, I don't know. That was just one thing that I was kind of a little bit like, okay, they're making this into like a prison state, and they're putting all these people in a prison, but why?
Well, the thing is that it reminded me of is Son of Saul. It reminded me of the process that happens in Son of Saul, where
the process takes at the place of the sort of the human element of it. It's like, nope, this is how we do it. This is how we deal with it. This is the rules. Let's fucking go.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't even make it doesn't
all right, I'll buy
necessarily
that.
make sense to us, but that's the process of it. So they go in there, and then they have that kind of amazing scene where Key gives birth. And what's amazing for a film that just sets up very briefly that there is no children in the world. And then there's a CGI baby, and it is a CGI baby. It's still a powerfully evocative image.
I was going to say, best CGI baby I've ever seen.
Yeah, and it's what? It's funny because it's 2016
I know.
now, and 2006, it's still, the CGI is a little ropey.
I don't even think it is. Honestly, for the world and the way they lit it, like they lit it for its strengths. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is the smart thing to do.
Yeah.
When I saw it, it took me a second. I was like, the only reason I really was like, oh, CGI baby, because it's a brand new out of the fucking womb baby, and you can't really film.
They show an amazing. You see it coming out of the womb.
It was really good.
It's great. And you know what's funny about it is like, if you watch the making of, you'll see the doll baby that they used as the thing that they replaced. Have you seen American Sniper?
Oh God, yes.
Do you remember the baby in American Sniper? It was like weird. They're having this conversation. They're clearly holding a doll. I'm like, how were they able to do this in 2006?
Well, do you know why they were holding a doll? Do you know why? I know why.
Oh, why?
It's because they had a baby booked.
Yeah.
And then that baby dropped out, and then they had the backup baby booked, and then that baby got sick.
Yeah.
And so they literally had all the actors, all the crew, all everything, and they were running out of money at that point, and they're just like, no, like we just use this doll. Like that's literally it. It's like every possible contingency for having an actual baby on set.
Replacing the doll with the CG.
I guess they didn't have the money. Like that's the weirdest thing. I know,
yeah.
But like that's the story of it. It's like that's production. Like no matter what you do, and I've been in a situation or two like this where it's like I've planned for everything.
Yeah.
Everything is falling apart, and it's like fuck. Now we got to use a doll. Like,
but for such it's weird.
I know
it's for such a large scale movie.
I know. But that was before everyone knew that movie was going to be gospel.
Yeah.
In the box office.
Yeah, and I guess it's weird because it just seems like that it takes you
100%
takes you out of that scene.
But this, a beautiful CG baby, keeps you in the scene.
Keeps you in the scene. It's amazing. Key gives birth. Then here's the scene we've been talking about.
The scene
we've been talking about. The uprising begins, and Theo, Key, the baby need to get to the water. And a lot of things are happening in this scene. Sid comes back because he's told he wants to escort them out, but then he saw on the news that
they were wanted.
Yeah, that they were wanted, and he's like, well, maybe there's some reward that can be had.
Then he sees the baby and he thinks, bigger reward.
Yeah. And then the Fishers come back, the Chitwell Effinger character, I'm saying his name so badly, comes back, and they want to grab the baby for the resistance. So, and plus the military are descending upon Bix Hill to kind of just blow it to blow it to smithereens. So you got all these factors going in, which is kind of like a complicated thing. And what does Alfonso Cauron decide to do?
Follow Clive Owen everywhere he goes.
And do it in a single take.
Isn't it actually a single take, or did they match some takes together?
I don't they in other scenes they definitely match takes together. I don't know if this is one of them. It might very well be, but it certainly gives.
But it's flawless. I mean, it looks like one take, and it's so beautiful that you don't even realize it until like 2/3 of the way through, and you're like, wow.
So, I mean, yeah. There must be some trickery because it's so well orchestrated.
Yeah.
You know, like we're looking up it's that amazing thing, which is like how we are so well orientated in this scene, given how much is going on, given how much the camera is shaking, we still know exactly what's going on in every part of the scene.
By only following one person.
By following one person.
And that's insane.
And just how well choreographed, like, when characters pop back up, we're given enough time to see who they are and what their relationship is to what's going on. It's so, like, if the masterclass part of this film is just, it's not just this part, but this is an apex of emotion and technical direction.
Yeah. And dude, ADs and TD. Holy shit.
Yeah, it's masterful. If I can just use that word one more time.
I mean, the level of technical prowess to pull that shit off and the amount of like teamwork is mind-boggling.
Yeah, and I'm sure there have been films recently that have done similarly complex things, but
sure, but not to the same grand effect and product.
Because it has one of the most beautiful, emotional, pinnacles of the scene, which is when the baby cries, and suddenly people who are in the midst of it does this beautiful thing with sound, which is that the baby's cries are initially drowned out by the sound of warfare.
Baby Bazooka.
And then eventually...
That was his name.
Yeah, that was the name.
At one point.
I was just getting used to Froley.
I know, Froley.
But then the baby's cries become louder and louder, and people stop fighting, and they start hearing the cry. And, as a new parent, again, it's this weird thing where that cry is so unique, and hearing a baby cry is so powerful. And the metaphor here is that when people stop hearing the voices of children, the world turns to shit.
Yeah.
And suddenly, in amongst the worst shit possible, we hear a child cry, and it stops. People are weeping.
It stops everything. The people that it's just living in this tenement building that they've climbed up sort of are weeping and reaching out for the baby. The freedom fighters that are or resistance or whatever, they were shooting down, stops, looks at the baby. The military, who is super grouped at the base of this building, just stops looking at the baby. Now, something that this did amazingly, because a lot of times when moments like this happen, I am always like, come on. Like, really? But you never get that moment. And the second before you might even start feeling that way, once they're out of the building and sort of walking through the military people, like maybe like 30 yards away from the entrance of the building, someone fires a shot back at the military or back at the resistance, and it just continues, and they just completely ignore
the fact that, a baby has just come through.
And that to me was so fucking perfect. Like,
so good.
as a narrative tool, as an allegory, as a thing just to move the plot forward. Like, it worked on every fucking level. Then they find a gypsy woman that they stayed with before. She gets them a boat.
Yeah.
And they sail off into the ocean. And then you find out when they're on the water with the baby and Key and Clive Owen that Clive Owen has been shot, which I love that sort of reveal. And he basically dies.
Yeah.
And
not before she reveals that she's going to name the baby girl Dylan, which was the name of his son.
Yes, which is beautiful. And then once he's dead, she sees a boat, and the boat says tomorrow on it, and you are left with it. Again, it's not like a cliffhanger ending, but it's not the most complete, because the entire thing, you're not sure if the Tomorrow Project is real. Then the way that this movie has conditioned you is, while it's not like, hello, we're the Tomorrow Project, we're here to save you. Like, that's what's going to happen.
But also, there's an interesting thing that we see right before that as well, which is that they're on the water, and we see jets fly overhead and
bomb the shit
out of Bexhill. And it's like, the irony of that is so beautiful, because it's like, the whole reason this culture is, this society is falling apart, is because there's no new babies. And
right. So let's kill a bunch of people.
And the thing is that had Clive Owen and Key not made it out of there, the first new baby in existence would have been killed without much thought. And the reason that would have happened is because it's something that the fish mentioned as well, and something that Julianne Moore's character mentioned. I think. No, Julianne Moore's character doesn't comment on this because the baby hasn't been revealed to her. But that the first new baby in London is an immigrant's baby. And that,
that's why Clive Owen, even in the beginning, when he's first at the Fishes thing, is like, just announce it. Like, what are you doing? Like, just tell people. Yeah. And they come back and you'd be like, they'd take that baby and say it's the child of a citizen instantly.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of a powerful tool to remind you about why that division between refugee and citizen is so it's so tenuous, and it's so based upon imaginary borders. It's based upon borders that are created until they don't work anymore. Like California was part of Mexico until it wasn't.
Right.
And then all of a sudden Mexicans are illegal to California. And I think there's another state that's like that as well.
Texas.
Yeah, part of Texas.
Texas.
Yeah, until a line is drawn, suddenly a whole...
I'm not going to go out in line and say that borders shouldn't exist for countries.
No, I think there's a reason borders exist.
I also think they're a huge excuse for a lot of bullshit.
Yeah,
but I, you know, it's look, nothing. The only reason anything is named anything or called anything is because we give it that like that importance, you know? Like,
well, yeah, but there's a I know we're the only podcast about movies, so this is fine. But there's a philosophy podcast I listen to called the Unmute Podcast with Maisha Cherry.
Ooh.
And she has an episode in there called about immigration, which is really interesting because it goes into the history of how immigration was set up in America. It just is one example from a historian's point of view, and the way in which basically, and the premise of immigration in America was based on, and up until 1946, was based on the premise of the white man. Right. Only white men could immigrate to America. And then there were certain boundaries about, so certainly no Africans could immigrate legally to America. And then that boundary was changed when Asians wanted to immigrate to America, and they needed to bring Asians to America for labor purposes.
Right.
So it's like,
I'm gonna have to give that a listen. I got into an immigration discussion based on obviously the goings on these days with a coworker, and I realized they had brought up about like there was a lot of sort of bluster about like immigration works like this, and I was like, honestly, I don't think either of us have done the research to figure out exactly how immigration works. So I'm gonna stop this argument because I don't think we're right anywhere. And no, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it's the Unmute Podcast with Maisha Cherry, and
shout out.
Talks to Jose Jorge Mendoza about immigration. It's really fascinating.
Cool.
It'll give you an entirely different perspective on the immigration debate.
Awesome.
So, and I think that's, ultimately, that's, while the film is talking about, it's weird because the fertility discussion and the idea of this future where babies can't be born anymore is swiveled on its head into an immigration and refugee film.
Oh, yeah, no, that's just the catalyst. That's just the baby thing is just so we can have a world in this story that is on the brink of falling apart, and that's when sort of the worst of people can come out.
Yeah, and it's
to give them the break,
but it's rendered so well.
Yeah,
it's rendered so like.
Yeah. Anyway, we are running a little long on the tooth on this bit, so Shahir, I guess final thoughts on Children of Men.
I started with saying like the story, the initial time I'd seen, the first time I saw it, I felt a little dissatisfied with the story, and I always pointed to this film as a case study of where the filmmaking prowess was better than the actual story being told.
Sure.
That said, having watched it 4 times now, and it's a film I will revisit many, many times.
Yeah.
The more I watch it, the more details I absorb, the more I kind of see how it's not necessarily in the immediate storytelling that the story is being told, but it's in the background of the story. It's in the details it's almost in the art direction that tells us another part of the story. And it still doesn't quite hold up as emotionally rich to me as Y Tu Mama También does, but look, as far as big budget action science fiction movies, I think this is one of the best, and I wish more movies were like this. And I'm really glad that Alfonso Cauron doesn't make Marvel movies. But I wish there were filmmakers of his caliber making them.
Give it time. And I think there's some of his caliber, just not this sort of technical mastery of the entire process yet.
Of his caliber? Really?
I think in his own right, Joss Whedon, in my opinion. I mean, that's just how I see it.
He'd be the closest.
But regardless, I think that, I mean, you've heard us for this last hour. It's a fucking amazing movie. And if you want to break it down to the point where, like, if you're someone with more of Shahir's kind of viewpoint on film, and you want to try to get someone to try to watch sort of more your style of movie, and they haven't seen this film, this is the perfect gateway. Because what I would call this is sort of, and this is not an action movie by any terms of the imagination, but there's a ton of action. So it's almost like this weird combination of like a thinking man's action movie in a very weird way. I would never like classify it as just like, oh yeah, that fucking action flick, Children of Men. But like, god damn, like some shit happens here.
Yeah.
And you can easily, it has this amazing quality where you're invested in the set pieces. Obviously, we've talked about them, but also the human moments and the story behind them have so much weight that if you have a goddamn soul, you'll be able to see it.
If you don't weep during that baby scene in the war zone,
I mean, I didn't weep, but I felt emotion.
Yeah, well, okay, fine.
But
when you have no soul is what I was going to say. But
well, I mean, I have half a soul. Do you have to bring up half a soul every time? No, I think this is a great sort of start point if you're looking to dig more into film. You want to bring a friend or a loved one into digging more into film. I think Children of Men is a great place to start if they're just used to sort of the popcorn flick.
And it's sad that it didn't do that well.
I know, but I mean, everyone in circles of filmmaking and TV and film, like, we know about it. Like, it's there.
Yeah, I guess I wish the greater population.
100%.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has been the only podcast about Children of Men. Shahir, where can people find you when we're not giving 10-year anniversary reviews for loving fans who we really appreciate?
Thank you, Dave Rowe. You can find my work at my website at www.shahirdaud.com. That's SHAHIRDAUD. You can always write into us with your requests for movies or things we've talked about, your opinions. Are we right? Are we wrong?
Let us know.
At onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter at onlymoviepod. Also, check in on our Facebook page, which is becoming quite a place for lively debate.
A hotbed of activity.
Yeah.
You can find me at matthewkrol.com for my life and works. Also, Skeletor 4 PREZ on Instagram and Emperor MSK on the Twitter box. Yeah, and write us in. Again, if you tell us a movie you want us to see, maybe you'll get your own special midweek treat from us, and it won't be poison. No guarantees. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening to this bonus thing. Thank you so much for suggesting we do this.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.